Hello, hello. Welcome to Find Your Wise. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Yndhira. It's funny because whenever we play the intro, I still get excited. It's been 16 weeks, I think, this week,
Yes,
which sounds like a long time, but also doesn't sound like very much time at all. But every time we play it, I get excited. I have little
yes.
dances, sing into it as it comes on.
So, welcome to Find Your Wise podcast, everybody. I would just like to ask you a question. Have you ever felt completely overwhelmed because you feel that it's only you that can do the job
Oh,
and
yeah.
nobody can do it as well as you do?
Oh, yeah.
What if I told you that that belief it's really holding you back from success?
Yeah, that I agree with.
Yes. So today we're diving into a leadership skill that can make or break your success, and that is delegation. Whether if you're leading a team or you're running a business or running your household,
Yes.
delegation is a secret weapon that can
Mhm.
help leaders to become great at what they do or also feel overwhelmed. My name is Yndhira. I'm your leadership coach.
And I'm Yvonne. I'm a financial life coach. And like Yndhira said, welcome to Find Your Wise.
Yes. So I just wanted to ask a quick question to you, Yvonne. Have you struggled with delegation or let go of control?
Oh, yeah. I can be a control freak. I'll admit it. I can be, but it depends on the topic. It depends on the subject and the circumstance that I'm in. But I definitely can be a control freak for sure. And I always suffer the circumstances of my choices because I get burned out.
Yes, you say a good thing. We suffer our consequences of the choices that we make. And yes, myself, I also struggle with let go of control. I'm a C, so I have tend to things that we in a perfectionism way. And this topic is really hitting home to me because recently having a conversation with my coach, we were talking about that I didn't have enough time to handle all the things that I have in my life today. And initially we thought it was about time. And then when we start peeling the onion, we find out, hmm, also I think there's many things that you could delegate and that will free you time to do things that are more meaningful.
Yes. It's hard to let go though, especially if something's you consider it your baby or if you are the one that is responsible for the outcome. Sometimes it can be really difficult to give that responsibility to somebody else.
Yes. And I don't want you guys to feel that, yeah, you're somewhat weird because would you suffer from that? In fact,
Most
based on
people.
studies, yes, based on studies said that 75% of leaders struggle with delegation. So it
Mhm.
means 1 out of 4, it's only good about at delegating. So it's really something that is impactful and is impacting many people today.
And I think it's definitely a task that people can learn to do. It might not be. I think this is going to become like my calling card. It's simple, but it's not easy. I'm going to have to start saying that everywhere I go because it's true. Everything we're teaching, it's very simple, it's not easy.
And that's true. And especially because sometimes, and it's simple, even when I was talking about the definition of delegation, and it said just transferring responsibility of a task to someone else. It's simple, but sometimes you can think it's just dumping responsibilities or tasks onto other people, and it's not like that. There's a process that needs to be followed so it can be effective.
Trust being the main one.
Yes,
And
that's
it's not even just at work. I mean, like you said, when we first started talking about this, it can be at home also. And I was a single mom for a long time, and I know that you're acting that capacity right now as well. And it's hard, to even let your kids do it, but it really will ease your burden. It will.
Yes, I'm going to give you an example that happened to me recently. I was sitting on my chair, I was doing something from work, and my son, he's helping me with the dishes. So, um, they always they observe what we do.
Oh,
So
yes.
I kind of got uncomfortable for a feedback or email that I received that it was not to the level of to my expectations. And then he asked me and he said, "Hey, did you tell that person exactly what you wanted?" And I said, I kind of told him. I kind of tell him. And then he said, because let me tell you something. If it's someone, some people will go and ask you questions to understand what you really want.
Right.
But if it's like me, I won't ask you. I'm going to figure it out and do what I can.
Yeah.
It was my 16-year-old that was giving me leadership wisdom.
Yeah. It's wonderful. He is very smart for saying that, because there are a lot of people that will say, I'll just figure it out on my own. And then if it doesn't reach to the level of expectation, they can be let down. The person giving them the trust can be let down. And it actually is a breakdown of communication more than anything else.
Exactly. And it's when you say burnout of break communication, is because sometimes as a leader, and it was my case, I didn't provide clear expectations at that moment to the person with what I was expecting, the results that I wanted. So it was on my responsibility to let them know what are the outcome that I'm looking for that. And that's something that we as leaders sometimes we struggle, because we expect people to think how we think.
Exactly.
And already know us enough, but sometimes it does. And it's the same thing in the household. I remember my mother, it was difficult for her to tell us what to do or put us to do certain things, because she wanted us to do it as fast as she was doing it. And it was impossible.
Right.
Imagine.
Well, and it does come down to that trust also, because if you are giving somebody the opportunity to do a task, it generally is because you trust them. But that doesn't mean, like you said, that they know exactly what's expected. It might be something that you've done 1,000 times and they've done once or twice.
Yeah.
It may be that they do kind of know how to do it, but they don't know how to do it like you do it. It could be a lot of things. And so that communication is huge. And, even showing them.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really hard too, because you're thinking, okay, I trust this person. I want them to do this task. And you don't want to make them feel like belittled, because you're like, let me show you how to do this. It's a really fine line how to delegate those tasks.
But let me tell you, for example, even if it's sometimes, now that you mentioned that, not to let the person feel belittled, one thing that you can do is you can say, hey, let me show you how I do it.
Exactly.
And if that works for you, that's fine. If not, you can adjust it. So at least and you can have at least a path, and you can choose if it works or not. At the end, as a leader, we're looking more for the outcome of something that is done, not necessarily how the person did it. But sometimes we micromanage, and that's when make it a little bit difficult.
Micromanaging. That is like the worst thing that you can do. It was so difficult. I mean, when I became a supervisor, it was one thing that I said I was never going to do, because when you are an employee of somebody and they give you the task to do something, like, okay, they trust me to do this, and then they hang over your shoulder all the time, that puts so much pressure on people. It's horrifying. It adds so much stress. And if you're going to hire somebody to do a job, you have to trust them. You have to trust them to do that job.
Yeah.
Because even as a manager, if you're now micromanaging the tasks that you've given to somebody else, you don't trust yourself, obviously, to have made a good decision on who's working for you if you had put in that.
You say,
you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself also.
Yes. And let me tell you, 69%, based on a study, they said that 69% of people said that they will work harder if people trust to them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, and they will give above and beyond if they feel that you trust them. So that is so important to help in the team. But you mentioned something important, is that sometimes as a leader, it's difficult to let go. And it's because sometimes we struggle with certain fears. And maybe people will say, we go back to the same thing, the fears. But believe us, one of the most important things as a leader is to lead yourself. And that's why you need awareness to understand what are the fears that you're facing that causing you struggle with delegation. So one of that I mentioned already was perfectionism. That is something that I suffer from. So another one is lose control, feeling that fear of losing control, or like you mentioned, Yvonne, for example, lack of trust. And that goes back when you said hiding, the process of hiding, and lack of training, it could be as well. Sometimes, and that's something sometimes happened to me, is time pressure. Because sometimes I think I'm in a rush, and you can think that it's easier if I do it because it takes me less time than if I go and I focus to train someone. It is good in the short time, in the short term. But when you go to the long term, it can be detrimental because you don't empower your team to do that.
Well, and I think
then,
that's when the role plays into when you're dealing with your children also, or delegating tasks at home. It's because we want it done quickly.
Yeah, because we don't have much time.
Right.
And we sometimes put pressure on the kids because we wanted to do it our way. Folding the clothes, that's a topic in my house. My kids told me, don't tell me anymore how to do it. And he preferred to look for YouTube video and do it himself. Because he said, and I'm not going to do it like you, Mom. He said,
and that's true.
Yes, he's not. And I want him to do it in a certain way. It's hard.
So have you ever found, like, going back into the corporate side of things, is that maybe sometimes leaders are afraid to delegate, like you said, because of lack of control. But what about their own insecurities? Are they worried that if they delegate a job to somebody else that they're going to do it better than them? And then now they're at risk for looking not so good? Yes. Have you ever find that happening? Not necessarily to you, but in your corporate life, have you seen that?
Let me tell you.
I have.
One of the fears is fears of being replaced. And it happened to me. I trained a person to cover a vacation for 1 month vacation. And when I came back, I was dismissed and that person took my job.
I think that happens a lot, honestly.
And let me tell you, it's something that happens, but as a leader, it's your responsibility to form the people that are behind you. Right. So that's the only way that you grow up. So if that happened, my thought at that moment was, this company don't deserve me. And it could be this and that. No, but it's real. The way that I prefer to do whatever I have to do and do my best for a company that I trust, that it's also there for me, and not because I go 15 days of vacation, I have to be frightened because I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
So it happens, but it's a balance so you to understand what you're really looking for. And sometimes they made the decision that it's beneficial for you.
Yep. And definitely when something like that happens and you know that you have done your best for a company, like you said, it's kind of best. You have to remind yourself that maybe this isn't the place for me. If that's how they're going to treat their people, they can have them.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why people also feel those fears and prefer not delegate most of their tasks and keep it in, and even struggle sometimes to develop processes and procedures. But from the organization standpoint, also there's a risk that the organization has to try to mitigate to make sure that they have people that they can replace and do that work if they have to do it. So it's from both sides is a very fine line.
It is. It really is.
But the paradox I can say is that, for example, leaders that don't delegate, they suffer from so many things.
Oh, yes.
So what do you think have you experienced any cost of not delegating?
For me personally, it caused a lot of strife at home. I was so dedicated to the job. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of my spirit. By the time I got home, I didn't have enough to give to my family. And so struggled sometimes that way, especially when I was a single mom. I know I go back to that a lot, but there are so many single parents out there, not just single moms, but I was a single mom. So I refer to the mom. I know several single dads, but I felt like I was doing what I had to do to get ahead, to stay ahead, to all of that. And, honestly, my kids did suffer. They ended up having, and this is where the delegation at home came into play, is that they end up having to take over a lot of the things at home that they shouldn't have had to, not just because they were part of a family, where they should have some responsibilities, but then they were delegated to have to do too many of the things. Yeah. I guess depending on how you look at it, overall, it worked out good. I ended up with a really, really great job, corporate job and all that stuff. But to what, you have to weigh the pros and cons. What was the cost? Yeah. And so, ultimately the cost wasn't great for my kids. Financially, money comes and goes. But sometimes you have to figure out, is the money worth the time?
Yeah.
So it is something that you really have to spend a lot of time and figure out what's right for you and for your family or, your situation.
Yeah.
So it has absolutely happened to me.
Yeah. And I think it happens to many people. more
Oh,
than what we
absolutely.
think. Yeah. And especially, let's say the good side sometimes is that we are helping when we're delegating at home, and if we do it in a conscious way, in a very educational way, so we can also provide coach and provide feedback, we are really creating little adults that we're
Yes.
preparing them for life. So
Yes.
it's good that we do that, but because of not delegating, even in a personal and professional life, it's really it's high. Like you said, for example, some people suffer from burnout.
I did,
Um,
for sure.
Times I even used to dream about work, and I used to wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And it was because I had so much stuff, and I wanted to have. I didn't have maybe the right team or the right
Yeah.
size of the team. And sometimes as a leader, you prefer to take more you than bombarding your team when you know that they already exhausted with all the
Yes.
things. And that caused also as the leader that more to feel overwhelmed in
Mhm.
reality.
Even more recently, my kids are grown, and one example is when it came to work, it was a totally different job, still corporate job. It was exhausting me. It was burning me out. It was stressing me out. It was all of the things. And I remember one time my mom had contacted me, and she was like, we're all getting together tonight for dinner or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And she's like, be over here by such and such a time. And I was like, Mom, I'm just really tired. I love you guys, but I don't feel like being around anybody tonight. And she kind of laughed. She goes, that's okay, honey. She goes, none of us really want to be around you either. And I went, oh.
Wow.
And it was her way of being really honest that I needed to take a step back and realize that everything I was going through with work and all of the stress of work and what I was doing was affecting so many people. I mean, she said it very kindly, very lovingly. If you knew my mother,
Yeah.
you would know she was a very tender lady that way. She was very honest with me, and it was my wake-up call. That really was part of my wake-up call to be like, what am I doing still?
Wow.
Yeah.
And it has to be very maybe difficult for her to transmit the words in that way, but she knew you and she knew
She did.
what really could
We had
go right and connect with you. Yeah.
Yep. So it can definitely affect so many people, when you are allowing your job to overtake you, because it did. It really did. And I was carrying that huge burden by myself.
Yeah.
So I needed that wake up call, though. It was a blessing that she was that honest with me. So
Yeah.
it can cause so many hardships on top of the good things.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Because sometimes we don't have when we recognize that it's already too late.
Right.
Because especially talking about burnout, when people feel like that, sometimes it takes a toll on them to be able to recuperate their life.
Yes.
If they don't have people that tell them and put the meter on their face so they can see what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about you?
So in my case, like I said, for example, not necessarily burnout, but a lot of the responsibilities and costing me not necessarily have the best relationship, especially with my son. It happened a lot with my first child. I used to work in a company and I love the company, but it requires me so much time. And I remember when I arrived home, if my husband was playing with my son, my son wouldn't look at me. He would prefer play with a nanny than playing with me.
Yeah.
And when I arrived earlier from work and I was playing with my son, my husband stayed outside playing with the dogs because he knew if he get in the house, my son will forget about me and that will crush me.
Yeah.
I quit that job and look for another company just because of that, because of how it was impacting my relationship with my child. So, and then I took a different approach and understanding that balance. But in order for me to understand that balance, I have to pass through that process that it was painful.
And that's why it was with my mom too. And that's why I was so grateful that she it made it sound like she was very harsh with me, but she wasn't. I mean, we did have a conversation afterwards and I'm like, what do you mean? you
Yeah.
know, but like I said, it was a wake-up call for me too, and I needed it. And I don't know if it's so much more of being a woman thing that we try to carry all of the load of home and family and work and everything else, but it was for our circumstances for sure, for you and I,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. And that could resonate with many people because in
Mhm.
reality, sometimes it's understand the balance. And it's so hard to get the balance. And now that we're talking about balance, I would like to talk about the benefit of delegating. And
100%,
one
let's do that.
thing is that it helps us to create balance and
Mhm.
also reduce for now what we just mentioned. Yvonne also mentioned about building trust and confidence with you, with your team, with your people, with your kids, because that gives that confidence.
Mhm.
What other thing? Also, you can empower them and give them ownership and accountability, and definitely helps creating promote growth in the organization and growth and development. And when we talk about this also in your house, because if your kids they can take care of themselves when they go to college, you're not worried about that
Yep,
because they're already ready and equipped for life. And that is our role as a parent as well, equipped
exactly.
our kids.
Yep, I know it definitely made an impact on my kids that way too, as far as the good impact. They are such wonderful, responsible
Yeah.
adults, and able to take care of themselves, their families, and everything else. It got to the point, with me, with my kids, is that it was wonderful that I would come home, and several times during the week, my kids would have already made dinner, so that we could still sit down together as a family and have that time,
Yeah.
and so we did learn to carry each other's burdens a little bit. It sounds so, leave it to Beaverland. It wasn't. But, it did teach them good cooking skills. It gave us all time together. It relieved some of the burden of something I had to do when I came home. So it did. The one thing that my daughter complains about that I didn't teach her well enough, though, was how to fold a fitted sheet, which I know I did. She says I
That's a,
didn't, but I
that's a
did.
challenge. That's a challenge.
But I figure at this point in life, she can figure it out.
Yes, yes. That one, I don't even look at it when my son they fold it. I prefer look sideways because
You
it's good.
know, as
That's
long as it's
trouble.
on the bed or put away, okay. Who
Yeah,
cares? Right.
but that's true. So in terms of delegation, in doing my research, I found that there's certain ways that we could delegate. And one thing that it's very well known is the 5 level of delegation by um, Michael Hyatt. So he wrote that book to teach us how to delegate. And there's certain things that we could apply. For example, the first way is that you teach the person to do it the way you're doing it. So do it as I say. That's the first, the basic one. Then the other thing is that they can look into that and they can report back to you. So they can do some research, bring the information, and then you make the decision. The third step will be they look, they make the research and then bring recommendations, which is good because they already
Mhm.
start analyzing.
Right.
Um, the other one is make decisions and tell me what was the result. And the last one is that you take full ownership so they can handle everything and update it as needed. The problem is that we dump the task and sometimes we let the people roll and then we come back to asking what happened. But the problem is that if we didn't go through the process to teach them and hold them in hands, obviously the result won't be successful. And what happens is as a leader, sometimes we want to take the task back because it was not as we expected. But the problem sometimes is that it's poor delegation process that caused that it didn't handle it right way.
And that can go hand in hand with work and at home.
Yes.
A perfect example is going back to my kids cooking. I wasn't even there for this, but my kids told me about this, and we still laugh about it to this day. Is one time my son, okay, my kids had seen me make macaroni and cheese 1,000 times, like every parent does for their kid. And my daughter, who is older, would make it from time to time for her and her brother. Well, one time my son wanted to make it. And so he asked my daughter, "How do you make it?" She said, "You just put the noodles in the water and, whatever. And so he did that, but she left out one really important instruction. And that was to drain the water from the pasta before you add the cheese sauce. And so to this day, he still is mad at her. I mean, 20 years later about this soupy macaroni and cheese. But, it just, when you want somebody to do something, make sure you're giving full instructions, especially if it's the first time that they've done something. No matter how many times they've seen you do it, somebody else do it, if they have not done it themselves, either supervise them, do it the first time, or really give full instructions. Yes. It's really important that they know what they're doing, because like you said, otherwise then you're going to want to take it back and go, no, you did it wrong. I will do it from now on, when ultimately it laid at your feet because you were the one who the problem laid at your feet because you didn't give a full instruction.
Yes, that was pretty funny.
Oh, children, they're wonderful.
Yeah, but the good thing is that sometimes they are there, and I mean, the relationships that we have with my kids, it's very strong, so they can speak up and tell things. So sometimes our topics are kind of out of the order, and especially when we're talking about they're judging the way I'm doing certain things. And really, it's an eye-opener sometimes to me, because it's there's a little wisdom there, so pay attention to that. So there really is the kids are a reflection of what we're doing, and it's so important that we sometimes listen to them.
Yep, they are little observers of everything, even when they're not so little, and they do see the world through different eyes. Yes. So, and you can kind of, whether it's your children or an employee, they both can have an innocence about them that we ourselves don't see, because we don't have that innocence anymore. We're just going about our way of doing things regularly, but they're observing us. Yes. And so if they come back if you're saying, I want you to do this, and they come back with you with an observation, it's wise to listen for a lot of reasons. One is because they might actually have a better way of doing something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's true.
Drain your macaroni. That wasn't a great observation, but they really might. Not everybody's going to see things the way that you do. Just because you've done it this way forever doesn't always make it right.
But let me tell you that you mentioned that it's so important as a leader that we let room for mistakes, because sometimes we want things to be done perfect, and unless you're in the world of like a neurosurgeon, stuff like that you need precision to the teeth. It's different in our life and work environment. We can coach through those mistakes so things can be done better.
Yep. I mean, if it's something like you said, if it's a doctor or a surgeon or something super critical, then you probably don't want to delegate that.
Yes.
But if it's not necessary or super impactful, then you can kind of start to look at it from that idea of maybe this is something that I can allow somebody else to do or take over or help with at least.
Yes. And especially, and like you mentioned, when you're going to delegate, you're not going to start with the most difficult task. You have to start progressing gradually, adding things to that person based on the trust that you're getting for that person is providing the results that you're expecting. And you can adjust and then increase the type of responsibilities that you're providing. So you can start little by little, and then you can then put tasks that are more important.
Well, and delegating just doesn't necessarily mean telling somebody else what to do, like we've talked about in the corporate positions or as a parent to children. Sometimes it means teamwork, whether you're on a team together at work or, living together in the same house, husband, wife, spouse, whatever you are, significant other, roommates. Sometimes you can even come together as a team and equals to delegate jobs to make things go more smoothly. It doesn't always have to be some instruction coming from above telling you what to do. So that can work in your household, whether you delegate or decide together as a team what jobs you're going to do, what chores you're going to do, who's going to pay bills, who's going to cook dinner, on teams at work, who's going to work the shredder tonight, who's going to whatever. There's always stuff to be done, even as peers, that can be delegated amongst equals, that can ease everybody's burden together.
Yeah. That's good that you mentioned that, because on the fears that we're talking about on the top, sometimes you don't have the time to do the delegation. But for example, my son teach my younger son to make eggs
Mm-hmm.
because he say his eggs are better, and definitely his eggs are better than mine. Yeah. So he said, no mom, you're not gonna do it, I will do it. So yeah, those type of things
Right.
help you. And the same thing at work, and that remove you from that burden that you don't have the time, and you can ask
Mm-hmm.
someone else that they peers that they can also, if they can teach that other person and train them on the things that you are the task.
But even that's something that as a supervisor or a manager, you can even give to a team as a whole and say,
Yeah.
you guys decide amongst yourself who wants to do what or who can do what. And that actually even relieves you of more responsibility of even having to take the time to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Same thing can be said in families as parents. You kids decide amongst yourself who's going to do it. Here's the list of things that have to be done. You choose what you're going to do. And you give them the freedom also to choose what they like to do.
Yeah, and that gives trust, confidence, and
Amongst
many of
themselves.
things. And
Yeah.
then you can see which one take the lead and have more leadership skills so you can use, because it's so important when delegation is looking at the strength. So
Yes.
in that case, you're removing yourself from the equation and let
Mhm.
them do and decide based on their strength that they have. So that's really good advice. I like that one. Yeah.
Only because I've had to implement that both in corporate and at home.
Yeah, it's really good.
It
Another
works.
thing, yes, one thing that I wanted to mention is that we talk about this many times.
Yes.
And this, in terms of delegation, it's very important because depending on your leadership style, that could really affect the way that you could delegate. For example, if you're dominant, most of the time you delegate very fast. You don't provide many details because you're always running fast and you're looking for results. So
Mhm.
it's important that you slow down and you provide clear expectations. If you're an influencer, for example, that you're focused on people. So since you love people all the time, you don't necessarily follow up. So you need to put some level of accountability checkpoints.
Mhm.
If you're steady, you are more support oriented. And in that case, you prefer the harmony and they avoid conflict. So you need to make sure that you provide clear directions and when you provide the task so people understand what exactly you're looking for. And for example, if you see more detail oriented, that you always want things to be perfect, you need to trust and avoid micromanaging, because especially things won't be perfect as you want. But if someone can do at least 80% of the results that you can, it's worth delegating.
Mhm. And that's why it's really important for each person on the DISC scale to have support and to have somebody that they can trust to do things. Because, like you said, a D who's going to make those decisions like this and say, do this, do this, do this, they might not always make the exact right decision.
Yeah.
And because they're just wanting to get things done. And a lot of times they might delegate a job to somebody who is not equipped for that. Maybe even just their personality. You don't want somebody who's a complete introvert to now go and answer the phones and
Yes.
deal with customers. So it's important to know your people.
Yes.
And S, somebody who's steady might have difficulty delegating because they want everybody to just be happy.
Yeah.
So everybody has the need for support and growth in the areas of, trusting other people to do a job.
Yes. So that these type of things, and that also applied in your personal life, that it's so important that you understand your team, that you get to know, that you communicate with them. Yes. And know yourself as well, because that was when you make that connection and you
I didn't say
understand.
that the C, which is what we are.
Yeah.
I'm an I, you're a C. We're
Yeah.
perfect, right? We don't have room to grow.
But obviously, as leader, it is so important that you look at yourself. As a parent,
Yeah.
people are looking at
Oh.
you. So it's so important that you learn to lead yourself. So you must do the first step.
Well, and I think it's really important for people to understand also that when we talk about leader, we're not just talking about somebody in a corporate setting or a job. You can be a leader in almost any aspect of your life. You are a leader. If you're a parent, you're a leader at home, regardless of whether you think you are or not. You are.
Yeah.
You could be a leader in a meeting that you aren't necessarily the boss in the company, but you might just be bringing up ideas for other people to listen to that puts you in a leadership position. In your church congregation, in anything, you don't necessarily have to have a title to be a leader. If you're in a position for anybody to listen to what you're saying or to follow you in any way or to influence people, you're a leader.
Yes.
And that's why all of these things are important to know.
Yeah, you say the right word, influence. Because sometimes the leader not necessarily could be the boss, could be someone on the team that people trust. So
I know in my supervisory life, my lead was a fantastic leader. She was amazing, and I chose her for that because she was very influential. She had the knowledge that was needed, but she also had the influence to get the people to do what needed to be done when they didn't want to do it.
wow.
And that was the skill that I needed the most out of her. She was fantastic.
Yeah. So that removed that burden from you, and she was able to take care and make the.
And so that too, you're in a leadership position, choosing other people that can also delegate for you is enormous.
Yes.
That'll help so much.
So let's talk about a little bit of an action plan. For example, if you are struggling with delegation, and if you, for example, understand the needs that you feel overwhelmed. So one of the things that you can start is identifying a task that you can delegate. And you can separate the tasks that only you can do. So those are the ones that you have to do. But you can then identify those tasks that doesn't require your undivided attention, and you can start delegating those tasks.
Yep.
But it's so important, as we mentioned before, that you choose the right person. And how you do that, you need to make sure that you know your team.
Yep.
You communicate, you understand what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. Because the one important aspect is that you wanted to how can I say, reinforce this strength, the people that people bright in their strength area.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of focusing on putting things in the people that are not good at that, put it into people that are good at that, and they're going to bright.
I would say if they're at least 80% as good as you, that's a good measurement to say, you know what, I think this person will be good. Because honestly, we're never going to think anybody's as good as we are. That's just human nature. But I think, if you can be like, they could do probably about 80% as good as me, give them a chance.
Yes.
And
I have found people that after I put the assignment, they do it faster and better than me in less than a month. And I say, wow. Because, for example, if they have a lot of computer skills, they can automate. And after that, no, you do that. I have, for example, one person in my team that she's so good doing presentation. She said, oh, fantastic. So I said, I'm going to do presentation. I told her, look, I look for this, and that. I said, no, you do it perfect. But one important thing is that we need to then recognize what they're doing.
Yes.
And make sure that the recognition don't go to you, go to the person that did the job. Yep. And that creates a bond with your team.
Yep. I think that's important even when you're delegating to your kids. I know one thing that, when we had parent-teachers conferences, the teachers were always like, oh, they're so wonderful. They're so well behaved. You're doing such a good job as a parent. And I'm like, no, they're doing a fantastic job as kids. So that can be, brought even home. It doesn't have to just stay at work to not take it on yourself. Although I knew when they were at home, sometimes they could be little beasts because they were kids.
Yes.
But they did know how to regulate themselves and be well behaved out in public and at school. So it is really important to make sure that you give them the recognition, whether it's work or home or anything else. Like you said, don't always take it on for yourself to say, oh, I did that.
Yes. Another thing is trust, but verify. Make sure that you trust, but then, and instead of, if from the beginning you let them know this is what we're going to do and this is going to be the milestone and I'm going to be doing checkpoints at here and there, they don't feel micromanaged because you already set the expectations. Yep. And always provide feedback. If they struggle with that, go and coach them how can do better. But if they they did it good, recognized. So that is
Mhm.
very important.
Yep. I mean, it's just like when you're in school. A teacher gives you a task or gives you an assignment of something you've never done before. They're not just going to say, here's some instructions, now go. You have to have tests and quizzes and all that along the way. It's the same concept.
Yes. Yeah. Like we said, it's simple. But
It's logical, but it's not easy.
it's not that simple.
And
Once you start implementing.
delegation can be emotional
Yeah.
for the person trying to delegate.
Yes.
It really can. And it's going to be a test of yourself.
And your skills. Yes.
Yep.
On delegating. So, like we said, it's so important that you understand that you need to empower. The only way that you can, not the only way, but there's this among other ways that you can free yourself to dedicate time and focus on the things that matter. It's if you develop this skill. It's not a skill that you're going to born with it. It's something that you
Right.
learn, and you as you apply with intentionality, you become better at it. But this way, you can empower your team and your kids and help them grow and help them understand that they really are capable of doing it and giving them that trust. So,
Yeah.
this is going to be really important if you apply those things that we said to help you free time and also dedicate you as a lead to guide your team and your kids at home or your family or any member of your household as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take some, because I know that we both take notes when we're doing some research, and I'm going to take some of these notes. I don't know if I want to two or combine them, but I want to put them on our Facebook page, and I really would like people to go over there. We put clips out there during the week so that you can see little bits and pieces of the episode. But I also want to start putting more content out there that you guys can have notes of things that we're talking about. And I want to do that, especially for this one, because there's definitely, I even have some age appropriate delegations that you can give for kids, different ideas of things that you can trust them with, even in your home, financial delegations. So I really want to give that out to our audience, and it's on our Facebook page, the Find Your Wise podcast Facebook page. You can find it there. And like I said, throughout the week, we'll put it out there also. So join us there and subscribe to it so you can know when we have stuff out.
But don't keep me hanging. What are some financial delegation that we can apply? Please.
Oh, there's, a lot of it comes to everything. It can come down to budgeting, who's going to set up a budget. You both have to follow it. Some people are really good with things like budgeting. So that'd be a task that you would take on. I know that when I was married, my ex-husband was not a budgeter at all. He was just like, there's money, so we're okay. Where I was very much the budgeter. I was the type who I could go through our checking account and find another $200 that he's like, where'd that come from? I'm like, well, this is what happens when you look at your money. Who needs to be very aware of the bills and what's being spent. Although I will tell you right now that if you are in any sort of relationship where you are sharing accounts, responsible, I advise both people to be just as alert of the finances. I think that is a dual task. Maybe it's one person's responsibility to pay the bills and one person's responsibility to budget or whatever. But I think anybody that's involved with your finances needs to be fully aware. Maybe it's one person's responsibility to make sure that they're hitting their savings goals. One person needs to be, more responsible for making sure the estate is set up. But like I said, I always advocate for that. If you're in a partnership of any sort, everybody needs to be aware of what's happening. That doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to always do everything. Somebody can manage allowances. And not just for kids, but I think adults can have allowances too.
Yeah.
I really think that's important. So there's a lot of financial management that can go on, that can be delegated to whomever feels the most comfortable, or whoever, maybe somebody wants to learn how to do these things, and it's going to be your responsibility now to do those tasks. But there's always things that can be delegated within a household, unless you live alone, and then it's all on you.
Delegated to you.
But it's actually not. I lie. There are things you can do even as a single person for your finances. You can delegate a lot of your things to apps, which, depending on your financial circumstance, that's not something I necessarily advocate for either, unless you are really in charge of your bills and know where things are going. Because if you're struggling, with spending or paying your bills or something, I don't advocate for that because you want to be hands-on when it comes to your money. But actually, there are a few things that I'll have on here too that will be on the website, on our Facebook page, that you can look at and say, oh, okay, maybe that's something I didn't think about, teaching kids about credit and all kinds of things.
That's fantastic. So if you wanted to learn a little bit more about this, because this topic it's tremendous.
It's huge.
It's huge. And the impact that it can do in our life is tremendous, because it also helps us, not just for us to do it and apply to, like you mentioned, leadership, household, finances in every area of our life. And it could be a very good result.
Yep, so, it absolutely can.
Yes. So I hope you have enjoyed the episode. And if it's that the case, please make sure that you subscribe, share, and leave any comment that you understand. And let us know, what is the hardest thing that you have had to delegate?
Yes.
What has been that thing that you struggle delegating? And you can leave it in the comment, and we will see then in our Facebook group, like Yvonne mentioned. Please don't hesitate to go there so you can see more information about this that can be useful.
And if you think there's anything that we've said through any of these episodes, that somebody else that might like or need to hear, send them our way. Send them to the Facebook page. Send them to the YouTube page. We're kind of all over the place, but YouTube is going to be where you're going to see the full episodes. Spotify also, Rumble, but YouTube is the best place to get it. And come to our Facebook page. Like I said, we're going to start putting more content out as far as the clips, but then also written content, so you guys can actually kind of see stuff in writing, which is a little bit easier to maybe follow.
Yes. So thank you so much for listening, and make sure that you delegate as much as you can, but effective delegation to make your life a little bit easier. Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.